All right, we're back again. I'm going to let everybody take a minute to find their seat, get their drink, take the break, whatever they're doing there. Excited to have Charles Turner from KARE on here. I mean, I've seen Charles and his team at many shows through the fall and this past year, but the first time I saw him was at Leading Age Leadership last fall, and he got up before the keynote and did his talk, and I had no idea about KARE or Charles before that, and because I'm newer to the industry, but was totally blown away by the presentation, totally impressed, and so we're glad to have him here today. Before we turn it over to him, just a little housekeeping. If you want to talk, chat, everything there, that button at the bottom. If you just want to put your comments in there, your thoughts, any interactions you want to have during the presentation, that'd be great. If you have questions specific for Charles about his presentation, put them in the Q&A box, and we'll do that at the end. And other than that, Steve Moran.
Charles, glad you're here.
Yep, thanks.
Love your data, love the stuff you're doing. You are one of those people who's really transforming the workplace and senior living for the better. And so I really appreciate that. Looking forward to your presentation. Just two quick notes. Don't forget to do your speaker evaluations. You should be all already caught up. You heard this on, well, I'll drop the link into chat. And again, we are going to give away an Amazon gift card to the person who chats the most. And so with that, Charles, David and I are going to step off stage. We'll let you introduce yourself and teach us something.
Cool. Do I get an Amazon gift card? Because I'm going to be chatting quite a bit.
No, you don't.
Okay. I'm going to go share my screen real fast to get us started. Let's do this. Hopefully everyone can see me real fast, and of course the controls are covering up the button I need to press, so let's try this one. How's that? That good? I'm assuming so. Yep. For those of y'all not familiar with KARE, so to start off, this is not a pitch for KARE, but it helps contextualize a little bit about what we do. So KARE, for those of you guys who don't know, so think of us kind of like, we're doing to staffing agencies what Uber did to the taxi industry. So we're a firm believer that if you can qualify nurses and caregivers to work on a platform, and then you can qualify communities to match with them, why do you need a staffing agency where technology should do that? So we've been around for now a few years, not very long, but we have over 30,000 people working on our platform, nurses, caregivers, med techs, things like that. And we're working with thousands and thousands of communities in about 40 states right now. And the reason being, it's unlike a traditional staffing agency. We've solved the kind of the three major problems. That's pricing, that's cultural alignment, and then hireability. So with KARE, on our app, we don't even set the pay rates, right? So our customers set the pay rates. They can decide to pay $1 an hour or $1,000 an hour. We don't necessarily care. The shift will not get filled for $1 an hour, but you're more than welcome to try. But we don't set the pay rates. The only time we ever charge you money is we charge a small flat fee on top of each hour that's filled, and that's it. And it's going to be, so it's always far less expensive than a staffing agency. And most times it's actually far less expensive than your own staff overtime. But the good news is, because we have rating, we have not only like a 5-star rating, but we also have an algorithm that measures and predicts how reliable someone's going to be. You actually get to bring people, you choose who comes in your community based on who applies to work that shift. And so, you control if there's a certain cultural alignment you're trying to meet, you can actually see all the reviews these folks are heroes, we call them, have ever had, to make sure they match your community. And once you have a relationship, you can invite them to come back again through our app. And then there's also performance with that. So like, if they'll get paid that same day as long as they get a 4 or 5-star rating. If they don't, they've got to wait a week. You can put a bonus on that shift, and if they don't get a 4 or 5-star rating, they're not getting that bonus. So our quality metrics are very high because we incentivize great outcomes for our heroes. And then last, if you like our heroes, you can hire them for free. I'm a recovering owner and operator. I had been in the space for 15 years of developing, owning, operator, and we knew that everyone, one of the biggest problems was hireability with staffing agencies. Well, we solved that problem. if you like our folks, hire them. We encourage you to do that. We have a lot of companies that use this as a hiring tool. So that's my only pitch about KARE. I'm not going to even really talk about KARE anymore. I say that to say this, because we have 30,000 people now working, over 30,000 people working on our platform. We get to ask them questions. So we have a lot of state associations and national associations, and we actually have an interior design company that's using us to build surveys to understand what motivates our frontline workforce. What you're going to see here is a few slides with bar charts and graphs, and I know I'm kind of at the end of 2 days, so I'm sure people are thinking, gosh, what I really would like to see is a lot more bar charts and graphs. Well, the good news is that I have that for you. You will see a few slides like that. But specifically what I want to talk about is how the research that we've done can be tailored for sales and marketing, right? We always talk about my communities. It's like we want the caregivers to be part of the sales process, and I think there may be some confusion on what that means. I think a lot of us like, well, let's have some caregivers be part of the tour and help give tours, and when we see someone, they're going to answer questions and things like that. And that's a decent way of doing things, but I actually think there's a much more organic way, organizationally, of taking our caregivers and making them a part of what we're trying to do. Let me kind of show you what I mean here a little bit. So this is one of my favorite slides, favorite pictures in the world. So this was taken just about a year ago, where we took almost everybody in the company to Cabo because we hit some big goal and it was a big celebration. Now we had about 50 people on this trip. Our employee base has now grown exponentially. I think we're about almost 250 employees. But this was a fun event, a big celebratory event. And I think this picture reflects our culture as a company for KARE, meaning, we're kind of fun. There's a huge youthful element to it, kind of a us against the world sort of idea, kind of rock and roll, sort of mentality. And I think this picture really shows that. Now, what I love about this is I think this kind of reflects our culture. Now, when we start talking about culture in a community, it's different. I think like a lot of times as leaders in a community, especially sales and marketing people, we get really excited about, we want to have a culture where everybody kind of rallies around. In senior housing, I think those initiatives fall flat, and I think they're misguided and misdirected sometimes. So while this kind of culture may work for KARE, it doesn't work for senior living sometimes, because I think we don't understand what culture means. We think we do, but a lot of times we don't. So let me show you what I mean by that. So this was a foundational study we did about a year and a half ago, I think. I'm like losing track of time. This is like, I think this isn't even the full slide. This is part of one data set that we did on a much larger white paper. And if you want to see a lot more of this study, you can go to our website, which is doyoukare.com. Again, that's KARE with a K. And you can actually see the data where this came from. This is just one slide from that. I always like to show this slide. Because we asked the question, here's what we did. We asked communities, like, why do frontline caregivers come to work for you and why do they leave? And we asked caregivers, why do you go work for a community and why have you left? Because what we were trying to do is see is where do they agree and then where do they disagree? And so this is a summary slide that shows some of those results. So why do you go? Right? So you read this slide from right to left. So everyone generally agrees with, okay, they kind of go because of low pay. Now, as communities, we think the pay is a little less important than the caregivers do, but we kind of generally agree. Now, the next one I thought was fascinating, and this is the one we're going to hone in on for this presentation, is disrespect from management. Okay, you can actually talk about not just management, but probably from community management. That's not just the ED, that could be the DONs, that could be sales and marketing directors and things like that. What this slide says is, we go to the communities, we say, why do caregivers go? And the communities by and large say, well, they don't go because we're disrespectful. And the caregivers say, we absolutely go because you're being disrespectful. Like, well, what does that mean? Like, why is there such a disconnect to this term of respect? Because I think we misconstrue what respect means from two different parties. We're not in agreement what that means. I'm going to drill into that in a second and show you why it's really important as we're talking for sales and marketing initiatives. And then of course, you look at the next one, these things are actually when you from a caregiver standpoint, we see these as distinct things. From caregivers, these are actually all one and the same. This is culture. So disrespect from, we think disrespect from management and poor company facility culture and lack of teamwork from coworkers are kind of three distinct things. From a coworker standpoint, from a frontline caregiver standpoint, that's actually kind of one and the same thing. Culture for a caregiver is not so much a mission statement. I'm going to be frank with you guys. If you spend a lot of time thinking about mission statements and how you're going to present yourself as a group to the public, from a frontline caregiver standpoint, that's kind of a colossal waste of time, right? They see culture as, do you respect me as an individual? And not only as an individual, but as an individual member of the team. So I'm going to go past this slide, but understand, like, this is where, if you start to understand the notion of respect, you can now start to understand how you use your frontline caregiving staff as part of your sales and marketing process. So let's drill down to what respect means. And so as you see this, then you can think about, okay, well, how would I use this for my, to bring in caregivers into my sales and marketing process? So this is one of my favorite slides. What does it mean to say I'm being disrespected, or what does it mean to show respect? Look at the top, kind of the right. The number one thing was not listening to my needs or ideas, and they kind of go across. The second one was micromanaging me. You can actually kind of see those two things are almost very similar, very related. What it means is, don't praise me, because if you look at the top, the thing they don't want is praise. Like, the employee of the month, turns out to be a bad idea. It actually backfires on you. Why? Because it creates a transactional nature between employer and employee. It says, you did good, I'm giving you a reward. Well, okay, that's nice to have a little bit. The other way, it's like, it seems very transactional. I would much rather be treated as part of a team. Instead of saying, good job, Janet, you did a good job with Mrs. Jones yesterday. Instead of that, it should be, Janet did a really good job with Mrs. Jones. Can you work with the team to show us what you did so we can all learn from it? Janet, that caregiver, that nurse, wants to be part of the team. They don't want to be seen as a commodity, and they don't want to see it as a system of metrics and rewards. So as we're thinking about how do we bake our caregivers into our marketing process? I hate to break to the sales and marketing people in this, because I've had a lot of them. You guys don't sell the community. You help set up the process for bringing people in the door and managing the customer experience, but you don't sell the building. The people that sell the building are the people in the building, because I've had to put relatives in communities. I've been in communities. The thing that sells it the most is, do I get a feeling that the people here know and want to know me and respect me as a potential customer, and how are they going to take care of my mom, or how are they going to take care of my dad? Sales and marketing person can tell people, but ultimately it's a lot better if you show them. And how do you do that? Well, the way you do that is you have to build, we always talk about, especially folks in sales and marketing, this, right? You probably have like a 30 or 60, 90 day check-in process with your residents. How are they doing? We need to do the same thing with our nurses and frontline caregivers, meaning that you need to get to kind of know every single one of them. You need to know who they are, what are their career aspirations. Let's not assume that they all want the same thing. If you know them as individuals and support them as part of the team, you don't need to train them on how to give a tour, because as you're walking a prospect down the aisle, they're going to grab that say, hey, let me show you how I take care of residents and why I love working here. So then the next question, who actually is disrespecting me? Well, they always say the admin, their ED. I think as this slide shows, as you sort of work up the pyramid, the further up the pyramid they are, the more abstract it is, then the kind of the least respectful. If you're an admin ED, sometimes you actually have to be kind of the tough one. We get that, but sometimes it's because I don't know who the ED is, and she doesn't know who I am either. She doesn't get to know me. It's kind of that part of that 30, 60, 90-day process. We actually have, you know, at the bottom, we kind of lump sort of the other ones. This was for a different study, but luckily, you know, they generally think a lot of the dining staff, things like that, maintenance, they know them a lot better. The sales managers are in here as well. But I would focus on making sure, not that you're asking somebody to do something for you, but how can you like know and learn and understand everybody in your community on an individual basis. So the other question is, like, this goes back to, we, you know, again, as an operator, I thought we had a really cool culture of all the stuff we were trying to do. You know, some companies that are saying we want a hospitality based culture, we want a luxury based culture, you know, we want a servant leader culture. All these are really good, but those are really more mission statements. That's not culture, right? Your culture is how, and for frontline caregivers, how you treat them individually. And so, you know, there is this belief in our industry that, gosh, we can pay people a little bit less, and we just had a much better culture. And the frontline caregivers are saying, like, no, we're not. And the reason is because it's sort of a Maslow's hierarchy of needs issue. If you're making $10, $12, $15 an hour, that's way more. That extra dollar is way more important than sort of self-actualization and culture, right? So you may have the greatest mission statement in the world and everything, but if I'm not getting paid enough, I'm going to leave, unfortunately. So the question is, you got to have wages that are at least at parity, but we're not going to go to take less for a great culture, but we will go to a company with, you know, if all pay is the same, we're going to go to a company with a much better culture. So you think, well, okay, Charles, this really doesn't play itself out. Now, while this is not necessarily the sales and marketing side, I will show you definitively how this happens all the time with folks using our app. So this is a screenshot I took, well, it looks like a while back, about a year ago, just randomly here in Houston, where I am, but we're 40 states, but I took a screenshot of a shift posted on our app. This is one that was posted. I removed some incriminating data on it, so you want to know who it is on both of them. You know, the way it works is you post a shift, set the rates, and then you put a shift description. Now, this shift description I really like. It basically says, you know, here's what we're expecting. We're looking for, you know, hardworking CNA who has knowledge of PCC and managed ADL care. But then it says, when you do this, as soon as you come in the front door, you are respected as a member of our team. You are no different than anybody else, because a lot of times the agency and outside workers feel like you just dump on me because I'm not a member of your team. You disrespect me. Same thing with your own employees. Like when they come in, don't dump on them. Treat them as a member of your team, as an equal, and let them contribute to being part of the team. So this is a great shift description on how anybody coming to work in your community should be respected. And you think, okay, I'm sure we're all in senior housing, we're all very, you know, warm, high EQ people. Turns out we're not as high EQ as we think, because there's another building right down the street, exact same time, that posted this. ADLs, that's all they said. All this says to me was, I want to treat you, come in my building, I'm going to treat you as a commodity, keep me compliant, and go away. That's all it says. And we treat our own frontline workers the same way. We don't want them to be part of the tour because they're a commodity. I'm a salesperson. I should be able to sell this. The fact of the matter is, they're actually selling better than you are in that building, because they want to see that person that likes being there. They want to be respected as part of the team, and they work well with the residents. The vast majority of caregivers love working with residents. They love it. They can go down the street for an extra $1 and get that dopamine hit. They don't have to stay at you. So you better treat them well, treat them as part of the team. Now, the question I always ask, which shift do you think got filled? They actually both got filled, but do you know which one got filled first? Everyone thinks it's the one on the left. Turns out it's the one on the right. And the reason is because they paid $3 more an hour. So the only way to overcome a poor culture is you got to pay people more, right? So think about that as you're interacting with your own frontline staff. So the last thing, I'm going to share this real quick. This is dealing with benefits. We always talk about benefits. Going back to the other study, was kind of confused me of as an operator, we would always offer benefits, but they would always take them. and the data kind of shows that. I have a whole study on benefits. That's not really the purpose of this, but I wanted to show this because I think this is a really interesting slide when you start to unpack what it's really telling you. I know it's busy. Again, ask communities the same question as caregivers. What non-traditional benefits do you want, and what non-traditional benefits do you think a caregiver wants? We think that, I've been saying this for years, that if we solve the child care problem, we solve the labor crisis. Turns out that's probably not true. What folks are really wanting are, first thing, they want a tuition reimbursement in the related clinical field, and the next is a tuition reimbursement in any field. And then you start going to full shift flexibility. Yeah, they like the free meal and they like some prepaid gas cards. The other thing is they want mental health. Like that was way higher than I think as operators we expected. Like especially if you think about it, the large portion of our caregiving population are African Americans, where culturally mental health is somewhat stigmatized sometimes. So I actually thought it was really cool that like way more than we thought as operators, they actually wanted to see that. So if you look at this slide in totality, what is it really saying? It's saying, don't give me a handout so I can do my job and because you feel sorry for me. Like, why don't you actually give me tools to help me improve my life, level up, be able to plan my life better and educate me better and train me better so I can level up my skill set. And again, to further be part of the team, like help me be a part of the team. Don't just thank me for showing up to work. And so we need to start switching our mentality of how do we get to get caregivers to be a part of our team. So anyway, those are all the slides I had. I mean, it's sort of a tonality I wanted to get across on the idea of respect and what respect is and how to treat caregivers as part of the general team, especially in your sales and marketing efforts. I think we got a few minutes left, Dave, and I'll kill the slides. There we go. I don't know if there's anybody has any thoughts or questions on that.
I for sure do. Definitely as the marketer, as the marketing guy, for sure agree with you that we can paint as great a picture as you want on the outside in many ways. But when the boots hit the ground, the rubber hits the road in your community, that's what's going to be that's what's going to tell the story, and that's going to be the deciding factor. And I also back in the fall sat in on a leadership talk about culture and improving that. And I agree with you. I think where you're kind of going is it's a little tone deaf still, and not just senior living, everywhere. What a leader, someone who's most likely more affluent than their boots on the ground employees, they just have a different perspective, and they just kind of need to reorient that perspective. It's not right or wrong. It's not judgmental. It's just we need to take a step back and reorient that. When you help someone, what a leader does is help their team grow, protect them, help them grow and develop them. And that is how you deliver them value. It's not superficial things. So anyway, perfect. 100% agree. Steve,
cool. The thing I come back to is really on the first couple of slides that you talked about, Charles, and this idea of respect. If I were an operator going in to fix a operation that was going badly, where occupancy was low and turnover was high, the place I would start would be very non-traditional. I'd actually go to the community and I'd walk in and say, I'm Steve, I'm here to help you. And I'd really mean it, but the place I'd start would be not to tell them how I'm going to help. I'd walk in and say, tell me what we need to do to fix things here. And I've had the opportunity to walk into communities to ask frontline people that. It is like crazy fun to do. And they will give you solutions that are not expensive, that are not extravagant, that are practical, and they will transform your organization. And so that means that when I've walked into buildings where it just feels good, and I've walked into a building where it feels awful, and that's about the culture, right? You can't necessarily quantify it. And so what you've been talking about is all of this is about how you create a culture where when a team member walks in, when a family member walks in, when a prospect walks in, it feels really, really good. If it feels good to walk in, it'll feel good to be a resident, it'll feel good to work there. It will feel good to move your loved one in. So powerful, powerful stuff.
Yeah. Cool.
Other questions? Yeah, so Linda, you actually make a good point. I will tell you some of the best buildings that I've been into and the ones that feel really terrific. I'm sure, Charles, you've seen this too, are not the newest, fanciest buildings.
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, it's you know, I've probably secret shopped about 300 buildings. I have a brochure of every single one I've ever been to, and sometimes they're not. I mean, you know, they may be bright, shiny penny, but some are. I've been in buildings where like this building is awful, and like I walk in like the staff is absolutely amazing. Probably in my experience, probably the least pretty building we ever had the best staff. It was near a university where we get a lot of college kids working, and people that were actually very loyal to the residents, and it's the energy level there was always off the charts, and I loved it. So it's not. We actually the whole thing about attracting frontline caregivers. Fancy break rooms actually help attract staff more than I thought it would, but it does zero for staff retention. Like it's absolutely zero for staff retention. So even pretty buildings for caregivers actually want to work with a pretty building. That actually helps attract, but it never keeps them.
Yeah, and I mean the problem with a great break room, a beautiful break room, is that after 6 months of working there, it's just the break room.
It's just the break room.
Yeah.
And
So,
I'm doing my documentation there anyway, so it doesn't. I can do that anyway.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, exactly right. So this was really, really, really terrific. Just a couple little notes. I'm going to pop up the give Charles some love by rating his talk. It'll take you about 30 seconds to do that. You can either type in the web page there, or you can use the barcode on your smartphone. This has been, honestly, if you've been through 2 days of this, you should be able to report back to us in 6 months that you have no staffing problems and that your building is full. If you take just half of what we've talked about, it is, the hard part of this stuff is not knowing. It's always being willing to do the execution, being willing to say, I've got to go do this differently than I'm doing it today. And that's how transformation occurs. So.
Good deal.
And with that, Dave?
Yeah, and with that, that's going to bring us to our next will be John Larisha, Welcome Home CRM. And perfect way to end up. It's reflecting on 2022 and planning for 2023. So we'll see in about 7 minutes for John, and that'll be our show. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Perfect. Thanks, Charles.
All right.